I'm gonna be honest, man, I was kind of debating, do I even want to make a video about this topic? Like, it's not really a thing that I think is going to happen, but at the end of the day, you know, this channel has always been mostly about discussion, and we talk about a lot of things that don't end up happening, mostly for the fun of it. You know, it's kind of fun talking about trade rumors and hypothetical stuff that doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but just getting the gears turning in the minds as to what could happen and what could be possible makes for some pretty entertaining discussion half the time. So for this is one of those. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't really know if this is anywhere close to realistic, but it is a very intriguing idea nonetheless. Let's talk about the Seattle Kraken, and let's talk about the Calgary Flames as we talk about the guy that links these two teams together in the captain of one team, the former captain of the other, 37-year-old left-handed defenseman, Mark Giordano. Oh wait, he's 38. I can't believe he's that old already. But either way, Mark Giordano, as we kind of know, he has been the face of the Calgary Flames franchise, the captain of this team ever since 2013-14. He's always been a pretty solid guy back there, but he really exploded in 2018-19, where he all of a sudden just had a point-per-game season out of nowhere. It was good enough to net him the Norris Trophy as the NHL's top defenseman, despite the fact that he was indeed like 35 years old or whatever it was, but all the seasons after that, you could kind of see a little bit of a decline with the Calgary Flames themselves, and for Mark Giordano, it was a little bit less consistent with, you know, what exactly the team was expecting out of him and the services that he brought. He didn't really match that same super high point production status that he had that season. And as a result, with the contract of $6.75 million coming to an end at the 2022 season, with the no trade clause in there, and with the Calgary Flames being the team that they are, they exposed Giordano in the expansion draft for Seattle. And guess what? This was the one pick where I think Seattle Kraken fans are kind of like, yeah, okay, we took the best player available. All the other players that were available, from Voracek to PK Subban to a whole bunch of other guys that were actually there for the taking, and the Kraken were just like, oh no, sorry, we'll take your young prospect that is only barely broken into the league because we want cap space. This was the one pick, I think, where it was like, okay, they made a good choice. They're getting a veteran, they're getting a leader, they're getting a guy who could come in here and make this locker room his own because he has been the captain for 7 years already, and being the face of a brand new team, this could be like the same Marc-Andre Fleury impact that he had in Vegas when Vegas selected him in the expansion draft. And guess what? Mark Giordano this season, not doing all too poorly. 7 points, 19 games played. Do the math on that. 7 divided by 19 multiplied out by 82. He is on pace for a grand total of 30 points, which would kind of be in the same ballpark of seasons he has had before, albeit a little bit of a less productive season point per game wise compared to last season and the year before, even though those were lower productive seasons as well. The thing is, though, Seattle is a bad team in the standings. Now, while they not be a terrible team in terms of what they have done, they're 5-4-1 in their last 10. Right now, they are at 20 points in 25 games played. This team is down there in the dumps after a very poor start, and only recently have they actually started getting the chemistry going, the team gelling, and actually start finding that ability to score goals before the third period. The Seattle Kraken right now are in the complete opposite position as the Calgary Flames, who, currently, at the time of recording this audio, top the Pacific Division with 35 points in 26 games played. They've lost 2 in a row in regulation. So this record was actually a bit better a few days ago. Not to mention the fact that their goals against metric of 56 goals against on the season is one of the best in the league. There isn't really a team out there in the West that is actually matching them aside from the Dallas Stars, who are down there at 59 goals against. And then in the East, you have some other teams over there too. Boston comes to mind, Carolina comes to mind. They have goals against metrics in the 50s as well. But Calgary has been a defensive workhorse, and this team, despite the fact that you have Nikita Zadorov, who hasn't really been all too good this season, despite the fact that there are some players that you would expect more out of, they've been showing up. Jacob Markstrom definitely has a part to do in that. You have other guys who have stepped up on this team in ways that you kind of weren't expecting, but are very welcome stepping ups in the organization. And for Mark Giordano, 38 years old, to be playing on the other side of the spectrum on a team that is at the bottom of the Pacific, it does kind of get the gears turning as to whether or not something could be brewing there. This is our article we're talking about over here. Mark Giordano has unfinished business with the Calgary Flames. This is on NHLTradeTalk.com and takes a look at one quote from the Always the Underdog article that popped up in The Athletic the other day. This is a very good read. I'll leave a link in the description to that if you have The Athletic, but because NHLTradeTalk.com is a free website that does not require a subscription, we're going to be taking a look at the quote from here. As per a source who says the defenseman will never publicly admit, Mark Giordano feels like he has unfinished business with the Calgary Flames. Now, what does that mean? This is the first paragraph of that article. It's not a given that defenseman Mark Giordano goes back to the Calgary Flames next season, but according to a report, the option is certainly on his radar. As per an article by Dan Robson and Haley Salvian of The Athletic, although he won't say it publicly, those closest to Giordano say that there remains unfinished business with Calgary too. It's the franchise that gave him a chance to live his dream, and a city that became a home to his young family. Now, again, this is from the Athletic article, but the Athletic is paid for material, so this screenshot is from the NHL Trade Talk article. But the idea does arise when you take a look at where the Seattle Kraken are in the standings, what Mark Giordano's status is as a player, and what exactly the options are. Because if this team is still pretty bad by the time the trade deadline rolls around, Mark Giordano is already there at the halfway mark of his $6.75 million AAV being paid out. This season is his last season of having a contract as well, and he's got a modified no-trade clause. Who's to say that if the Seattle Kraken are still at the bottom of the Pacific by the time March rolls around, that they wouldn't go around and say, okay, hey, let's call up other NHL teams and start asking, do you want Mark Giordano? He's expensive, but he's got one season left. He's our captain. He's still pretty valuable. Hey, Calgary, come on. Want to get this guy? There is indeed a very interesting idea when you think about the Seattle Kraken and what exactly they could do by the time the trade deadline rolls around. Whether that's trading away the guy who's currently their captain or trading away any other contracts that they have built up on this team, there certainly are options, and when it comes to building the future, I mean, they had one NHL Entry Draft, they got Matty Beniers, I get that, there's some good prospects in the system, but that's only 1 year's worth of prospects, right? You need more than that to actually supplement your team into the long term. Giordano also says that he plans not to retire after this season because until they kick me out, I'm going to try and stick around as long as I can. This article in NHL Trade Talk was also posted onto the Calgary Flames subreddit, and I really wanted to highlight some of the ideas here because, of course, if Mark Giordano, let's say, wants to go back to Calgary, the Flames need to be interested in him too. Now, I get it, emotionally speaking, you might be like, yeah, of course, let's bring Giordano back, but you could say the same thing about Iginla, you could say the same thing about Lanny McDonald. Wanting a guy to come to your team because you like the guy and wanting the guy to come to your team because you think he'd be a good fit, those are two different things. There are some comments that I thought really do highlight the situation. Mr. Snuffleupagus, oh my goodness, I kind of think it's best to just move on. The team's rolling without him and the waters are rough in Seattle, so of course he feels this way. Reactive Cypress says, it's a very tough call on whether or not to bring him back. Obviously, he could still play, so it will be a big boost to our decor, but the problem is that he wouldn't be in the top 4 on this team anymore. Would he be okay with a diminished role? The other problem is the asking price. How much is Seattle going to ask for? I bet there are a lot of teams that would love to have Giordano, which is only going to increase the price of any trade. I don't think it's worth it for us to give up more than a third for him, given his age and his salary. If we're going to make a big deadline splash, we could probably get someone better. If we can make it all work out in a reasonable fashion, let's bring him back. He would definitely be an upgrade over Zadorov. It would be a great move to have Giordano along for the ride with the most dominant team we've had in years, but it might not work out that way. If trading is going to be tough, we can sign him as a free agent next year. And then the next comment says, dude, 2 years ago we were like second overall in the league, and yeah, that was a thing. I definitely remember that. There are some other comments that are a little bit more sly here too. It doesn't feel like it's a coincidence that the team is playing better without Giordano. So all of a sudden, it sparks up some really interesting conversations as to whether or not Giordano leaving this team, opening up more roles for other guys in leadership positions and top 4 defenseman positions, led to a very positive change structurally. I know my Calgary Flames fans, unfortunately I do have Calgary Flames fans as a Vancouver Canucks fan myself, there's been sort of this weird air around the team that suggests that Mark Giordano's departure did more for the team than not, and there's a reason why this team is a lot better than they had been previously. There certainly are some really interesting conversations to have, but I want you to tell me in the comments below, what do you think about this? If Mark Giordano does indeed have unfinished business with the Calgary Flames, do you see him coming back to Calgary? And if so, is that via a trade this season? Is it via a free agency contract signing next offseason? Or is it maybe a few years down the line? Maybe Giordano re-signs in Seattle, or maybe he goes to another team, and maybe when he's 39, 40 years old, he signs a one-day contract with Calgary to get the old Daniel Alfredsson treatment. That's one of like the most heartwarming things, I think, to actually have the one-day contract signed out to an NHL legend coming back to his hometown team. That's fantastic. But is it what happens with Giordano here? Talk to me in the comments what do you think. I hope you enjoyed this Rosén 99. And bye.